The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in Philadelphia, promising Delilah Northwood everything she had ever dreamed of: a teaching position at a respectable school in Apache Junction, Arizona, a modest cottage of her own, and most importantly, a proposal of marriage from Mr. Edmund Fairweather, the school superintendent who had been corresponding with her for 6 months. She clutched that letter to her chest and made her decision within hours, packing her life into 2 leather trunks and boarding the westbound train with hope blazing in her heart like a lamp in darkness. The year was 1882, and she was 23 years old, ready to begin the life she had always wanted, far from the gray streets and disappointed expectations of her Philadelphia boarding house, where she had lived since her parents passed 3 years prior. The journey took 9 grueling days, the landscape transforming from green hills to endless plains to the stark beauty of the Arizona Territory. Delilah watched it all through the dusty train window, her excitement building with each passing mile despite the discomfort of the hard wooden seats and the way the dust seemed to settle into every crease of her traveling dress. She read and reread Edmund's letters, memorizing his elegant handwriting, his descriptions of the growing town, his promises of a comfortable life together. He had sent a photograph, showing a distinguished man with dark hair and a serious expression, and she had sent one of herself in return, her blonde hair neatly arranged, her blue eyes staring hopefully at the camera. When the train finally pulled into Apache Junction on a blazing afternoon in early June, Delilah stepped onto the platform with her heart pounding and her hands trembling inside her gloves. The heat hit her like a physical force, so different from the humid summers back east. The town sprawled before her, a collection of wooden buildings and adobe structures scattered across the dusty landscape, with the Superstition Mountains rising dramatically in the distance. She scanned the platform for Edmund, searching for the face from the photograph, clutching her carpetbag while a porter unloaded her trunks. But Edmund Fairweather did not appear. She waited as the platform cleared, as the sun beat down mercilessly, as her dress grew damp with perspiration. Finally, she approached the station master, a grizzled man with kind eyes who was sorting through a pile of packages. "Excuse me, sir. I am looking for Mr. Edmund Fairweather. I was told he would meet me here." The station master looked up, his expression shifting to something like pity. "Fairweather, you said?" "Miss, there is no Edmund Fairweather in Apache Junction. Never has been, far as I know, and I have been here since this town was founded." The world seemed to tilt beneath Delilah's feet, but that cannot be right. "I have his letters, his position as school superintendent, his address. We do have a school, that much is true, but the superintendent is Mrs. Martha Hayes, a widow woman who has held that position for 5 years now." The station master's voice was gentle but firm. "I am sorry, miss, but it sounds like you have been deceived." Delilah felt the blood drain from her face. She fumbled in her bag for the letters, showing them to the station master with shaking hands. He examined them carefully, then shook his head. "The address is real enough, but that is just an abandoned building on the east side of town. Been empty for 2 years. He paused, studying her pale face. "Miss, you have been the victim of a confidence scheme, I am afraid. There are men who prey on young women back east, promising them marriages and positions out west, taking whatever money they can get." "But I sent him money," Delilah whispered, the full horror of her situation dawning on her. "For the cottage furnishings. $200, nearly everything I had saved." The station master sighed deeply. "I am truly sorry, miss. You should report this to the sheriff, though I doubt there is much he can do. These swindlers are usually long gone by the time their victims arrive." Delilah stood frozen on the platform, her entire world crumbling around her. She had spent the last of her money on the train ticket, believing she was traveling to a new home, a new life, a husband who wanted her. Instead, she was stranded in a strange town with less than $5 in her purse, no prospects, and nowhere to go. The shame of it burned through her, worse than the Arizona sun. How could she have been so foolish, so trusting? "Miss, if you need a place to stay tonight, Mrs. Cooper runs a boarding house on Main Street. She is a decent woman, might extend you some credit until you figure things out." The station master was trying to help, but his words only emphasized how dire her situation truly was. Delilah nodded numbly, unable to form words past the lump in her throat. The porter had left her trunks on the platform, and she stared at them helplessly. Everything she owned was in those trunks, including the new dresses she had sewn for her wedding, the books she had planned to use in her classroom, the small treasures she had carried from Philadelphia. "I can have someone take those to Mrs. Cooper's for you," the station master offered. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. She walked down the main street of Apache Junction in a daze, her vision blurring with unshed tears that she refused to let fall where people could see. The town was busy with afternoon activity, men on horseback, wagons rolling past, women with shopping baskets, children running and shouting. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, a place to be. Everyone except her, Mrs. Cooper's boarding house was a two-story structure with a wide porch, better maintained than many of the surrounding buildings. Delilah climbed the steps slowly, each one feeling like a small mountain. She knocked on the door, and after a moment, it opened to reveal a plump woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. "Yes, Mrs. Cooper. The station master sent me. I need a room, but I must be honest with you. I have been swindled and I have very little money. I can pay you $5 now, and I will find work immediately to pay the rest." Mrs. Cooper studied her for a long moment, taking in her quality dress, her exhausted face, the desperate honesty in her eyes. "Come in," she said finally. "You look about ready to collapse from the heat. We can discuss terms over some cool water." The kindness nearly broke Delilah's composure entirely, but she held herself together, following Mrs. Cooper into the blessedly dim interior of the house. They sat in a small parlor, and Mrs. Cooper brought her a glass of water that Delilah drank gratefully. "Now then, tell me what happened." Delilah told her everything, the whole humiliating story spilling out. Mrs. Cooper listened without interruption, her expression growing grimmer as the tale unfolded. "You are not the first woman to be deceived this way, and you will not be the last," Mrs. Cooper said when she finished. "These men are criminals, pure and simple. The question is, what do you intend to do now?" "Find work," Delilah said firmly, trying to summon some strength from somewhere deep inside. "I am an educated woman. I can read, write, and cipher. I can sew, I can cook, I can clean. I will do whatever is necessary." Mrs. Cooper nodded approvingly. "Good, you have spine, I can see that." "Apache Junction is not Philadelphia, Miss Northwood. Life here is harder, rougher. But there are opportunities for a woman willing to work. I will give you a room for a week, and we will see what you can find in that time. After that, we will discuss an arrangement for you to work off your debt to me." "Thank you," Delilah said, and this time the tears did slip down her cheeks. "Thank you so much." "Do not thank me yet. You have not seen the room, Mrs. Cooper's tone was dry, but there was a hint of humor in her eyes. The room was small, barely large enough for a narrow bed and a washstand, tucked under the eaves on the second floor where the heat collected like water in a bowl. But it was clean, and it was hers for the moment, and Delilah was grateful for it. She lay on the bed that night, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about how drastically her life had changed in a single day. She had come west chasing a promise that turned out to be a lie, built on nothing but fraudulent letters and her own desperate hope for something better. The next morning, she began her search for employment. She visited the school first, introducing herself to Mrs. Hayes, who was sympathetic but had no openings for teachers. She tried the general store, the hotel, the restaurant, the saloons, though those made her deeply uncomfortable, receiving polite rejections everywhere. Apache Junction was a small town, and jobs were scarce, especially for a woman with no connections and no references anyone could verify. By the third day, her $5 was gone, spent on minimal necessities, and panic was beginning to set in. She was sitting on a bench outside the general store, trying to compose herself when a man approached. He was tall and lean, wearing dusty work clothes, a worn hat shading his face. When he removed the hat, she saw he was younger than she first thought, perhaps 27 or 28, with sun-darkened skin and gray-green eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Excuse me, miss, but I could not help overhearing you asking about work inside." His voice was low and measured, with a slight drawl that marked him as a man who had spent his life in the Southwest. "My name is Travis Remington. I run a ranch about 5 miles outside of town." Delilah stood quickly, hope flaring despite her best efforts to contain it. "Delilah Northwood." "Are you in need of help, Mr. Remington?" "I might be. My housekeeper left 2 weeks ago, went back east to live with her daughter. I have been managing on my own, but the house is getting away from me, and I am spending too much time on domestic chores when I should be working the ranch." He met her eyes directly, his gaze honest and measuring. "It is not easy work. The house is big, and it is just me and 3 ranch hands who bunk in the barn. You would have your own room in the house, 3 meals a day, and wages of $25 a month." It was more than fair, more than generous even, and Delilah knew it. But propriety made her hesitate. "Mr. Remington, I must point out that it would not be entirely proper for me to live in a house with a single man, even with ranch hands nearby." "I am aware of that," he said calmly. "Which is why I am proposing that Mrs. Cooper serve as your chaperone of sorts. She could visit regularly, and you would have your days off in town to maintain respectability. I am not interested in causing scandal, Miss Northwood, just in having someone to manage my household. I am not home most of the day anyway. I work from sunup to sundown on the ranch." Delilah studied him, trying to read his character in his face. He had an honest look about him, a straightforwardness that seemed genuine. But then, she had thought Edmund Fairweather's letters seemed genuine too, and look where that had gotten her. "I understand your hesitation," Travis said, seeming to read her thoughts. "Mrs. Cooper knows me well. My father owned the ranch before me, and I have lived in Apache Junction my whole life. You can ask anyone in town about my character before you decide." "I will do that," Delilah said firmly. "May I have until tomorrow to give you my answer, of course. I will be at the feed store in the morning, around 9 o'clock. You can find me there." He replaced his hat, nodded politely, and walked away, leaving Delilah standing there with her mind racing. She went directly to Mrs. Cooper and told her about the offer. The older woman nodded thoughtfully. "Travis Remington is a good man, one of the best I know. His father, Robert, was a fair rancher who treated his workers well, and Travis is cut from the same cloth. Lost his parents to influenza 4 years ago, been running the ranch on his own since then. He is honest, hardworking, and respectful. If he says he needs a housekeeper, then he needs a housekeeper, nothing more. You trust him, with my life," Mrs. Cooper said without hesitation. "And if you are worried about propriety, I can visit twice a week to maintain appearances." Travis is right. He is out working the ranch from dawn to dusk most days. You would hardly see him except at meal times." Delilah made her decision that night, lying in her small, hot room under the eaves. She had no other options, no other prospects, and she could not live on charity forever. More than that, something in Travis Remington's honest gray-green eyes made her want to trust him, to believe that not everyone in this territory was a liar and a cheat. The next morning, she found him at the feed store as promised. "Mr. Remington, I accept your offer." "When would you like me to start?" A smile crossed his face, transforming it from serious to almost handsome. "Today, if you are willing. I can have your things brought out to the ranch this afternoon." She nodded, her heart beating fast with nervousness and something that might have been excitement. "Today, then." The ride out to the ranch gave Delilah her first real look at the Arizona landscape beyond the town. The desert stretched in all directions, dotted with saguaro cacti and scrub brush, the mountains rising in the distance like purple shadows. It was beautiful in a stark, unforgiving way, so different from anything she had known before. Travis drove the wagon in comfortable silence, pointing out landmarks occasionally, but not forcing conversation. The ranch house surprised her. It was larger than she expected, built of adobe and wood, with a wide porch that wrapped around two sides. Behind it stood a barn, several corrals and other outbuildings. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, and she could see 3 men working near the barn. "It is a working ranch," Travis said as he helped her down from the wagon. "We run about 500 head of cattle, sell them for beef and leather. My father built this place from nothing, and I am doing my best to keep it going." Inside, the house was indeed in need of a woman's touch. Dust covered most surfaces, dishes were piled in the kitchen, and laundry was heaped in a corner. But the bones of the house were good, with spacious rooms and large windows that let in plenty of light. "Your room is upstairs, first door on the right," Travis said, looking slightly embarrassed by the state of things. "I am sorry it is such a mess. I am better with cattle than with housekeeping." "It is nothing that cannot be fixed with some hard work," Delilah said, already mentally organizing the tasks ahead of her. "What time do you take your meals?" "Breakfast at 5, dinner at noon when I can make it back, supper at 7. The ranch hands eat in the barn, cook for themselves mostly, but they would appreciate any extra you could send out to them." He paused, then added, "I know this is not what you came west for, Miss Northwood, and I am sorry about what happened to you. Mrs. Cooper told me some of it. But I hope you will find this a fair situation, at least for now." His kindness touched something in her chest, a small warm spot in the cold place that had formed when she learned about Edmund's deception. "Thank you, Mr. Remington. I intend to earn my wages." "I do not doubt it," he said, and smiled again before heading back outside to his work. Delilah spent the rest of that day cleaning, starting with her own room and then moving to the kitchen. By sunset, she had made visible progress, and she prepared a supper of beans, cornbread, and bacon, the ingredients she had found in the pantry. When Travis came in, dusty and tired, she had the table set and the food ready. He washed up at the pump outside and took his seat, looking at the meal with evident appreciation. "This is the best my kitchen has looked in weeks," he said. "Thank you." They ate in slightly awkward silence at first, 2 strangers trying to navigate this new arrangement. But gradually, Travis began to talk, telling her about the ranch, about the challenges of the season, about his plans for expanding the herd. Delilah found herself relaxing, asking questions, genuinely interested in what he was saying. He was not a smooth talker like Edmund's letters had been, but his words had a weight to them, a substance that came from real experience and honest labor. "What made you come west?" he asked finally. Besides the false promise, I mean, what were you hoping to find? Delilah considered the question carefully. A new beginning, I suppose. My parents died 3 years ago within months of each other. I was alone in Philadelphia, working as a seamstress, living in a boarding house. When Edmund's letters started coming, they offered me everything I wanted. A home, a purpose, someone to build a life with. I wanted to believe in it so badly that I ignored the warning signs. What warning signs? He never wanted to meet before the wedding. He always had an excuse for why he could not travel east, why I should just come west and we would marry upon my arrival. And when he asked for money, he made it sound so reasonable, so practical. I was a fool. You were hopeful, Travis corrected gently. That is not the same thing as being a fool. The man who deceived you is the villain in this story, not you. His words were like a balm on a wound she had been trying to ignore. She looked at him across the table, really looked at him, and saw only sincerity in his face. Thank you for saying that. It is only the truth. He stood, gathering his dishes. I will let you settle in. If you need anything, my room is downstairs, the one at the back of the house. And Miss Northwood, I am glad you are here. I think this arrangement will work out well for both of us. After he left the kitchen, Delilah cleaned up the supper dishes and then climbed the stairs to her room. It was larger than the one at Mrs. Cooper's, with a real bed and a window that looked out over the desert. She could see the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky, more stars than she had ever seen in Philadelphia, scattered across the heavens like diamonds on black velvet. She had come west chasing a lie, but perhaps, she thought as she prepared for bed, perhaps she had found something real instead. Not what she had expected, not the marriage and schoolhouse of her dreams, but honest work and a chance to rebuild her life on her own terms. It was more than she had any right to expect after the disaster of her arrival. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Delilah rose early to prepare breakfast for Travis, then spent her mornings cleaning and organizing the house, tackling years of accumulated bachelor neglect. The afternoons were devoted to laundry, mending, and cooking, with occasional trips into town for supplies. Travis was gone most of each day, working the ranch with his 3 hands, coming home tired and dusty but always polite, always appreciative of her efforts. Mrs. Cooper visited twice a week as promised, ostensibly to check on the propriety of the situation, but really, Delilah suspected, because she enjoyed the excuse to get out of town and gossip over coffee. The older woman approved of what she saw, complimenting Delilah on the transformation of the house, and remarking that Travis looked better fed and better rested than he had in months. It was true. As the weeks passed, Delilah noticed the changes in him. The shadows under his eyes faded. He smiled more easily. He began to linger after meals, talking with her about his day, asking about hers, sharing stories about the ranch and the territory. She learned that he had grown up here, that he had briefly considered going east for college but had chosen to stay and help his father instead. She learned that he loved this land with a fierce devotion, that he could read the weather in the sky and the health of his cattle in their movements, that he was respected in town as a man of his word. And she began to notice other things too. The way his hands were scarred from years of hard work. The way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. The careful way he moved through the house, as if afraid to disturb her space. The respect with which he always treated her, never overstepping, never assuming, always mindful of the boundaries between employer and employee. Summer deepened into August, the heat growing more intense, the land parched and waiting for the monsoon rains that Travis promised would come. Delilah had been at the ranch for nearly 2 months, and she no longer thought of herself as a refugee from a cruel deception. She thought of herself as someone building a new life, slowly and carefully, on more solid ground. One evening, Travis came home later than usual, his face grim. He washed up and sat down to the supper she had kept warm for him, eating mechanically. "What is wrong?" Delilah asked, unable to ignore his obvious distress. He looked up at her, seeming to debate whether to speak. Finally, he said, "I have to make a cattle drive to Tucson next week. It is about 80 miles south. We will be gone for at least 10 days, maybe 2 weeks." "That sounds difficult," Delilah said carefully, not understanding why this warranted his troubled expression. "It is routine, actually. We do it twice a year. But I am worried about leaving you here alone. The ranch hands will be with me and the house will be empty except for you." "I will be fine," Delilah said, though a small flutter of nervousness moved through her stomach. "I can manage for 2 weeks. You could stay in town with Mrs. Cooper while I am gone," Travis suggested. "It might be safer." "Mr. Remington, I am not going to abandon the house the first time you have to travel. What kind of housekeeper would that make me?" She tried to sound confident. "I will manage. I can handle a rifle if I need to. My father taught me, and I will lock the doors at night. It will be perfectly fine." Travis did not look entirely convinced, but he nodded. "All right. But promise me you will go into town if anything makes you uncomfortable. Take the wagon, go to Mrs. Cooper's. Do not try to be brave if something is wrong." "I promise," Delilah said, touched by his concern. The next few days were busy with preparations for the drive. Travis and his men gathered the cattle, organized supplies, planned the route. Delilah packed food for them to take, mended gear, and tried not to think about how quiet the ranch would be with everyone gone. The morning they left, Travis came to the house to say goodbye. He stood in the kitchen, hat in his hands, looking as if he wanted to say something but could not find the words. "Be safe," Delilah said softly. "Do not worry about me. I will take good care of everything here." "I know you will." He met her eyes, and something passed between them in that moment, something unspoken but powerful. "I will be back as soon as I can." Then he was gone, riding out with his men and the herd, leaving a trail of dust that slowly settled in the morning light. The first few days alone were not as bad as Delilah had feared. She kept busy with projects, deep cleaning rooms, organizing the pantry, mending all the clothes that had been accumulating. She enjoyed the quiet in a way, the peace of having the house to herself. But by the 4th day, the silence began to feel oppressive. The house creaked and settled in the heat, and every sound made her jump. She found herself listening for hoofbeats, hoping for Travis's return even though she knew it was far too soon. On the 5th night, she was awakened by the sound of voices outside. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding, straining to hear. There were definitely men out there, multiple voices and the sound of horses. She crept to the window and peered out, seeing the shadowy figures of at least 4 riders near the barn. Fear gripped her throat. She remembered Travis's warnings, the stories Mrs. Cooper had told of rustlers and bandits who sometimes preyed on isolated ranches. She thought about fleeing to town, but the wagon was near the barn, and she would have to go past the intruders to reach it. Instead, she retrieved the rifle from downstairs, loaded it with trembling hands, and positioned herself where she could watch the front door. The men moved around outside for what felt like hours but was probably less than 30 minutes. She heard them in the barn, heard the sound of horses being led out. They were stealing Travis's horses, and there was nothing she could do to stop them. She was one woman against multiple men, and she was terrified. Finally, the sounds faded. She heard the riders leave, moving away from the ranch. She stayed frozen in place for another hour, afraid they might return before finally allowing herself to relax slightly. But she did not go back to bed. She sat in the parlor with the rifle across her lap until dawn broke, exhausted and shaken. In the morning light, she went out to assess the damage. They had taken 3 horses from the barn, good horses that Travis used for working the ranch. She felt sick, knowing this was her responsibility, that she had failed to protect his property. She also knew she had to tell him immediately. She hitched up the wagon with the one remaining draft horse and drove into town, going straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Coleman was a weathered man in his 50s who listened to her story with growing concern. "You did the right thing, Miss Northwood, not confronting them. A woman alone against a gang of horse thieves would not have ended well." He made notes as he spoke. "I will form a posse and see if we can track them, but I have to be honest, they likely have too much of a head start, and we need to send word to Travis. He should know what happened." "I do not know exactly where he is," Delilah said helplessly. "Somewhere between here and Tucson." "I will send a rider down the trail. Someone will find him." The sheriff stood. "In the meantime, you should not be at that ranch alone. It is not safe." Mrs. Cooper echoed the same sentiment when Delilah went to see her next. "You must stay here in town until Travis returns." "I will not hear any argument." But Delilah was stubborn, the same stubbornness that had brought her west in the first place now flaring up in defense of her responsibility. "I cannot abandon the house, Mrs. Cooper. What if they come back? At least if I am there, I can raise an alarm, ride into town if needed. An empty house is an open invitation for more theft." They argued, but Delilah would not be moved. She returned to the ranch that afternoon, determined to prove she could handle this. But the house felt different now, violated somehow by the intrusion. She checked and double-checked the locks, kept the rifle close and slept poorly when she slept at all. Travis arrived 3 days later, riding hard, his face dark with worry. He had left the cattle drive in the hands of his foreman and raced back as soon as the sheriff's rider found him. He burst into the house calling her name, and Delilah emerged from the kitchen, startled by his sudden arrival. "Are you all right?" he demanded, crossing the room to her in long strides. "The sheriff said there were rustlers, that you were here alone when they came." "I am fine," she said, though her voice shook slightly. "I am so sorry about the horses. I should have done something. I should have stopped them." "Stopped them how?" Travis's voice was sharp with emotion. "By getting yourself killed. Do you have any idea what could have happened if you had confronted them?" He ran his hands through his hair, clearly agitated. "The horses do not matter. They are just horses. I was worried about you." The intensity in his voice, the raw concern in his eyes, made something shift in Delilah's chest. "I am truly fine," she said more softly. "I was frightened, but they never even approached the house. I do not think they knew I was here." Travis seemed to deflate slightly, the adrenaline draining out of him. "I should never have left you alone. It was irresponsible. You had no choice. The cattle drive was necessary." She reached out and touched his arm, a gesture of comfort that surprised them both. "Please do not blame yourself." He looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face, and the air between them suddenly felt charged with something that had been building for weeks without either of them acknowledging it. "I was 3 days south when the rider found me, and all I could think about the entire ride back was that something might have happened to you, that I might be too late. And I realized somewhere along that road that you have become very important to me, Miss Northwood. More important than an employee should be to her employer." Delilah's breath caught. "Mr. Remington." "Travis," he said quietly. "Please call me Travis." "Travis," she repeated, the name feeling both strange and right on her tongue. "I have to tell you something. I came west because I wanted a home, a family, a place to belong. Edmund Fairweather's promises were everything I thought I wanted, but they were built on lies, on pretty words that meant nothing. These past 2 months here, working beside you, learning about your life and your ranch, have taught me something important. I do not want pretty lies anymore. I want the truth, even when it is hard and dusty and covered in calluses from honest work. And what is the truth? Travis asked, his gray-green eyes intense on hers. The truth is that I have fallen in love with you, Delilah said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them, before fear could silence her. I tried not to. I told myself I was being foolish again, trusting again when I should have learned my lesson. But you are nothing like Edmond. You are real and honest and good, and I cannot help how I feel. Travis exhaled slowly, and a smile spread across his face, genuine and full of relief. Thank God, he said. I have been trying to figure out how to tell you the same thing without scaring you away, or making you think I was taking advantage of your situation. I love you, Delilah. I think I started falling for you that first day in town when you stood up so straight and proud despite everything that had happened to you. He reached out and cupped her face with his work-roughened hands, his touch gentle despite their strength. I know you came here for different reasons, chasing a different promise. But I want to make you a new promise, one I will keep with everything I have. I promise to be honest with you always. I promise to work hard to build a life with you if you will have me. I promise that what I feel for you is real, and I will spend every day proving it. Delilah felt tears spilling down her cheeks, but they were good tears this time, tears of relief and joy and hope. That is all I have ever wanted, she whispered. Someone real, something true. Travis leaned down and kissed her then, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as she responded, her hands coming up to rest on his chest where she could feel his heart beating as fast as her own. It was nothing like the kisses she had imagined while reading Edmund's letters. It was better, warmer, filled with genuine feeling and the promise of something solid and lasting. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Travis rested his forehead against hers. I have to go back to the drive tomorrow. I have to finish what I started, get the cattle to Tucson and sold. But when I come back, I want to marry you if you will have me. I want you to be my wife, not my housekeeper. I want to build a real life with you here. Yes, Delilah said without hesitation. Yes to all of it. Travis stayed that night, sleeping in his own room as propriety demanded, but everything had changed between them. They sat up late talking, making plans, learning each other in new ways now that the boundaries had shifted. He told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting children someday to inherit what he was building. She told him about her parents, about her childhood, about her love of books and learning. They talked until the candles burned low, reluctant to let the night end. In the morning, Travis rode out again, but this time Delilah was not worried. This time she knew he would come back, that he would keep his promise because Travis Remington was a man who kept his word. She returned to her work with new energy, but now she was not just maintaining a house. She was preparing a home for the life they would build together. Mrs. Cooper was delighted when Delilah told her the news on her next visit. I knew it would happen, the older woman said smugly. I could see the way he looked at you and the way you tried not to look at him. It was only a matter of time. You could have warned me, Delilah said, laughing, and spoil the fun of watching you both figure it out. Never. Mrs. Cooper grew more serious. Travis is a good man, Delilah, one of the best. You are lucky to have found him. I know, Delilah said softly. I came here chasing a lie, but I found something true instead. Something better than I even knew to hope for. The days until Travis's return seemed to drag and fly at the same time. Delilah cleaned and prepared, sewed a new dress for the wedding, and tried to contain the excitement and nervousness that bubbled inside her. She had been in Arizona for less than 3 months, and already her life had transformed completely. The woman who had stepped off that train in June, devastated and alone, seemed like a different person entirely. Travis returned on a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks after he had left. Delilah heard the horses and ran out to meet him, propriety forgotten in her joy. He dismounted and swept her into his arms, spinning her around while his ranch hands whistled and cheered in the background. "I missed you," he said against her hair. "Every day, every minute, I missed you." "I missed you too," she said, holding him tight, breathing in the smell of dust and leather and hard work that clung to him. That evening, after he had washed up and they had eaten supper, Travis pulled out a small box. "This was my grandmother's," he said, opening it to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. "She came west in a covered wagon in 1850, one of the first pioneer women in this territory. She was tough as nails and twice as sharp. I think she would have liked you." Delilah took the ring reverently, slipping it on her finger where it fit perfectly. "I will wear it with pride," she said. "When can we marry?" "As soon as we can arrange it. This Saturday if the preacher is available." Travis smiled. "Unless you want something bigger, more formal." "I want to be your wife," Delilah said firmly. "I do not need anything more than that." They married that Saturday in a small ceremony at the church in Apache Junction. Mrs. Cooper stood as her witness, and Travis's foreman stood for him. Delilah wore her new dress, pale blue cotton with lace at the collar, and carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Travis had picked that morning. The ceremony was simple and brief, the preacher's words washing over her like a blessing as she and Travis pledged themselves to each other. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Travis kissed her thoroughly, scandalizing some of the older ladies in attendance but making Delilah laugh with joy. They walked out of the church hand in hand, and Travis helped her into the wagon for the ride back to the ranch that was now truly her home. That night, in the quiet privacy of the house that had become so familiar, Travis led her to his bedroom, which was now their bedroom. He was gentle and patient, mindful of her inexperience, taking his time to show her the physical expression of the love they had declared. Delilah had been nervous, but with Travis, everything felt natural and right. He made her feel cherished, desired, loved in a way that reached all the way to her soul. Afterwards, lying in his arms with the desert breeze drifting through the open window, Delilah felt a peace she had never known before. "I thought I knew what I wanted when I came west," she said quietly. "A teaching position, a respectable marriage, a tidy little life, but this is so much better. This is real." "You make me better," Travis said, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "This ranch, it was just a place I worked before you came. Now it is a home. You have given me that." "We have given each other that," Delilah corrected. The months that followed were the happiest of Delilah's life. She threw herself into making the ranch house a true home, adding touches of beauty and comfort to the functional structure Travis had maintained as a bachelor. She planted a garden, coaxing vegetables and flowers from the stubborn desert soil with determination and careful watering. She sewed curtains for the windows, braided rugs for the floors, filled the shelves with the books she had brought from Philadelphia. Travis taught her to ride properly, not just driving a wagon but actually handling a horse. They would ride out together on Sunday afternoons, his one day of rest, exploring the land that stretched in all directions. He showed her places he had loved since childhood, hidden canyons and unexpected springs where water bubbled up from underground. He taught her to raid the desert, to see the life that existed in what at first seemed like barren emptiness. In turn, Delilah taught Travis the pleasures of a well-run household, of coming home to hot meals and clean clothes and someone who genuinely cared about his day. She read to him in the evenings, introducing him to novels and poetry he had never had time for before. They talked for hours, sharing their thoughts and dreams, building the deep foundation of understanding that would support them through whatever challenges life might bring. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Travis expanded the herd, and Delilah proved to have a good head for the business side of ranching, helping him keep accounts and negotiate prices. By the time their first anniversary approached, they had saved enough to make improvements to the property, adding a new barn and repairing the fences that had been neglected. And then, in the spring of 1883, Delilah discovered she was pregnant. She told Travis one evening after supper, watching his face carefully to gauge his reaction. For a moment, he simply stared at her as if he had not quite processed her words. Then a smile broke across his face, transforming him with pure joy. "A baby," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We are going to have a baby, in the fall, I think, late September or early October." Delilah felt tears starting in her eyes at his obvious happiness. Travis pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "This is the best news you could have given me," he said against her hair. "A child, our child." The pregnancy was not easy. The summer heat was oppressive, and Delilah struggled with sickness in the early months. But Travis was attentive and caring, insisting she rest more, hiring a woman from town to come help with the heavier housework. Mrs. Cooper visited frequently, offering advice and support based on her own experiences as a mother years before. Their daughter was born on a clear October evening, arriving quickly and healthy after a labor that was mercifully short for a first baby. Travis paced outside the bedroom while Mrs. Cooper and the midwife attended Delilah, nearly wearing a hole in the floorboards with his worry. When they finally called him in and placed the tiny bundle in his arms, Delilah watched him fall in love all over again, this time with the small, red-faced creature that was part of both of them. "What should we name her?" Travis asked, his voice full of wonder. "Rose," Delilah said softly. "Rose Lillian Remington, after both our mothers." "Rose," Travis repeated, testing the name. "Rose Lillian, perfect." The baby transformed their lives in ways both exhausting and wonderful. Delilah had never known she could love someone so fiercely, so instantly. Travis proved to be a devoted father, helping with the baby whenever he was home, walking the floors with Rose when she fussed at night so Delilah could rest. They were tired and overwhelmed at times, but they were also happier than either of them had imagined possible. Rose grew from a tiny infant into a chubby, curious baby who filled the house with laughter and occasional tears. By her first birthday, she was toddling around the house, getting into everything, enchanting everyone she met with her gray-green eyes that were exactly like her father's. On a warm evening in June of 1884, almost exactly 2 years after Delilah had first arrived in Apache Junction, she and Travis sat on the porch watching Rose play in the dirt with intense concentration, making piles and knocking them down again. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if Edmund Fairweather had been real?" Travis asked quietly. "If you had found what you came here for," Delilah considered the question thoughtfully. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But I do not think it would have been anywhere near as good as this. Edmund promised me a safe, respectable life, a teaching position and a comfortable home, but he could never have given me what you have given me. What is that, a real partnership? Someone who sees me as an equal, who values my thoughts and my work, a love that grows deeper every day instead of staying static and safe." She reached over and took his hand. "I came west chasing a promise that was a lie. But you made me a true promise instead, and you have kept it every single day since." Travis lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "I intend to keep keeping it for the rest of our lives." "I know you will," Delilah said with complete confidence. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughter play, the desert stretching out around them in the fading light. Delilah thought about the terrified, heartbroken woman who had stood on the train platform 2 years ago, stripped of her dreams and her savings, facing an uncertain future in a strange land. That woman would never have believed that heartbreak would lead to this happiness, that being swindled would ultimately bring her to exactly where she was meant to be. She had learned that pretty words and elegant letters meant nothing compared to honest work and quiet devotion. She had learned that love was not something that arrived fully formed with a marriage proposal, but something that grew gradually through shared experiences and mutual respect. She had learned that home was not a place someone gave you, but something you built together with the person you loved. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Rose tottered over to them, demanding to be picked up. Travis scooped her up easily, settling her on his lap where she promptly started yawning. Delilah leaned against her husband's shoulder, one hand resting on her daughter's back, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. 2 years later, in 1886, Delilah gave birth to twin boys, Thomas and William, who arrived early one morning with considerably more drama than Rose had managed. Travis was beside himself with joy and panic, suddenly outnumbered by children. But he rose to the challenge with the same steady determination he brought to everything. Rose, now 3, was fascinated by her baby brothers, constantly wanting to help feed them or rock them or pat their heads with her chubby toddler hands. The ranch house, which had once felt too big for just Travis alone, now rang with the sounds of family. There were toys scattered in the parlor, small clothes drying on the line, and the constant noise of children playing and occasionally squabbling. Travis expanded the house, adding more bedrooms and a larger kitchen to accommodate their growing family. Delilah sometimes found herself exhausted by the demands of 3 small children, but she was never unhappy. This was the life she had dreamed of, even if it looked nothing like what she had originally imagined. She had not become a schoolteacher, but she taught her children to read and write and think. She did not have the tidy cottage Edmund had promised, but she had a sprawling ranch house full of life and love and the beautiful chaos of a family being raised. Travis proved to be not just a good husband but a wonderful father, patient with the children even when he was tired from long days on the ranch. He taught Rose to ride almost as soon as she could walk, and later would do the same with the twins. He told them stories about the land and the animals, instilling in them the same love for the territory that he carried. He made sure they knew they were cherished, that this home and this family were built on a foundation of love and commitment. Mrs. Cooper remained a regular presence in their lives, practically adopting the Remington family as her own. She delighted in the children, spoiling them with treats and toys, serving as a surrogate grandmother since both Travis and Delilah's actual parents had passed. The older woman often remarked that she had never seen 2 people more perfectly suited than Travis and Delilah, and watching them build their family together filled her with satisfaction. The years rolled by, bringing both challenges and joys. There were droughts that tested the ranch's resources, and seasons when cattle prices dropped and money was tight. There were illnesses that frightened them, injuries from ranch work that required careful nursing, and the ordinary struggles of raising children in a harsh environment. But through all of it, Travis and Delilah faced everything together, their partnership growing stronger with each passing year. By 1890, 8 years after their wedding, the Remington Ranch was one of the most successful in the territory. Travis had expanded the operation significantly, adding more land and more cattle, building a reputation for quality livestock and fair dealing. Delilah had become known in Apache Junction as a woman of substance, respected for her intelligence and her work ethic. No longer the naive young woman who had been swindled, but a force in her own right. Rose was now 7, a bright, energetic girl with her father's eyes and her mother's determination. The twins were 4, constantly getting into mischief together, but also showing early signs of the same work ethic their parents exemplified. The family was everything Travis and Delilah had hoped for, a testament to the promise they had made to each other on that day when Delilah had been at her lowest point, and Travis had offered her not just a job but a chance at something more. One evening, after the children were finally asleep, Travis and Delilah sat together on the porch as they often did, enjoying the cool desert air after the heat of the day. Delilah was mending a shirt while Travis reviewed the accounts, their comfortable silence punctuated by the occasional comment or question. "You ever regret it?" Delilah asked suddenly. "Taking a chance on a woman you did not know, bringing me out here, letting me into your life?" Travis looked up from his papers, surprised by the question. "Not for a single moment," he said firmly. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Delilah. You and our children. Why would you ask that? I was just thinking about how it all started, how desperate I was, how lost. You could have just offered me work and nothing more. You did not have to fall in love with me." "I do not think I had much choice in the matter," Travis said with a smile. "You walked into my life and turned everything upside down in the best possible way. I loved you before I even knew I loved you, if that makes any sense." "It makes perfect sense," Delilah said softly. She set aside her mending and moved to sit beside him, leaning into his solid warmth. "I came west chasing a promise that was built on lies, but you gave me something real. You gave me a home, a family, a life that matters. You gave me love that I can trust." Travis wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "You gave me all those things too," he said. "Before you, this was just a ranch. Now it is a legacy we are building for our children. You made me understand what it means to truly share a life with someone." They sat together watching the stars emerge, the same stars that had watched over them through all their years together. In the distance, they could hear the cattle settling for the night, and closer, the soft sounds of their children sleeping safely in their beds. It was a moment of perfect peace, the kind that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be. As the years continued to pass, the Remington family became a cornerstone of the Apache Junction community. Travis served on the town council, helping to guide the growth and development of the area. Delilah finally got to use her teaching skills, starting a small school at the ranch for their own children and several from neighboring properties, filling a need in the community while also staying close to home. In 1895, when Rose was 12 and the twins were 9, Delilah gave birth to one more child, a daughter they named Grace. She came as a surprise, conceived when Delilah had thought her childbearing years might be ending, but she was welcomed with joy by the entire family. Rose doted on her baby sister, and the twins treated her like a living doll, carefully gentle with the fragile infant. Grace's arrival seemed to complete their family in a way none of them had known was missing. She was a happy, easy baby who rarely fussed, content to be passed from one family member to another, absorbing the love that surrounded her from every direction. By the turn of the century, in 1900, Travis and Delilah had been married for 18 years. Rose was now a young woman of 17, beautiful and capable, already attracting the attention of young men in town, though she showed no particular interest in any of them yet. The twins were teenagers, working the ranch alongside their father, learning the business from the ground up. And Grace, at 5 years old, was the baby of the family, charming and mischievous in equal measure. The ranch had grown into one of the largest operations in the territory, employing dozens of workers and running thousands of head of cattle. Travis and Delilah had built something substantial together, something that would endure long after they were gone. But more than the material success, they had built a family rooted in love and respect, children who had grown up seeing what a real partnership looked like, who understood that marriage was about working together toward common goals. One evening in the summer of 1900, the entire family gathered on the porch for supper, something they tried to do at least once a week, no matter how busy life became. There was laughter and conversation, the children telling stories about their day, Travis and Delilah exchanging glances of satisfaction and amusement as they watched their family interact. After the meal, as the younger children ran off to play in the yard before bedtime, Rose stayed behind, helping her mother clear the table. "Mother," she said quietly, "I have been thinking about the story of how you and Father met." "What about it?" Delilah asked, stacking plates. "You came here for one man and found another. You came here expecting one life and built something completely different." Rose paused, choosing her words carefully. "Do you think that is what love is, finding something better than what you thought you wanted?" Delilah looked at her eldest daughter, seeing the woman she was becoming, the intelligence and depth that reminded her so much of herself at that age. "I think real love is about building something together," she said thoughtfully. "When I came here, I was chasing someone else's idea of what my life should be, someone else's promises about what would make me happy. But with your father, we built our life together from the ground up. We decided together what we wanted, what mattered to us, how we would face challenges. That partnership, that mutual respect and effort, that is what makes it real." "Did you know right away that you loved him?" Rose asked. "No," Delilah admitted. "It grew gradually. I noticed his kindness, his honesty, the way he treated me with respect even when I was just his employee. I saw how hard he worked, how much he cared about this land and building something lasting. And somewhere along the way, I realized I did not just admire him, I loved him. It was not a lightning bolt. It was more like a sunrise, gradual and inevitable and beautiful." Rose nodded slowly, absorbing this. "I think I understand. When the right person comes along, you will know," Delilah said, reaching out to squeeze her daughter's hand. "Not because they promise you the moon, but because they show up every day and do the work of building a life with you. That is what matters." Inside the house, Travis watched through the window as his wife and daughter talked, their heads bent close together. He felt a swell of emotion, thinking about the strange path that had brought them all here. If Edmund Fairweather had been real, if that situation had worked out as Delilah planned, she would never have needed a job at his ranch. They would never have met, never fallen in love, and none of these children would exist. In a strange way, he owed that con man a debt of gratitude for bringing Delilah west, even if the method was cruel. But he preferred to think of it as fate, as some grand design that had known they needed each other, even when they did not know it themselves. Delilah had been broken and desperate when she arrived, and he had been lonely and isolated even if he had not wanted to admit it. Together, they had healed each other, built each other up, created something stronger than either of them could have managed alone. As the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple, the Remington family gathered together one more time, the children reluctantly heading inside for baths and bedtime, Travis and Delilah following behind with Grace between them, holding both their hands. "Happy?" Travis asked his wife quietly as they climbed the porch steps. "Always," Delilah replied, smiling up at him. "Every single day, And it was true. The woman who had stepped off that train 18 years ago, devastated by betrayal and facing an uncertain future, could never have imagined the life she would build. She had come west chasing a promise that was a lie, following empty words from a man who never existed. But she had found something infinitely better, something real and true and lasting. She had found Travis Remington, with his honest eyes and work-roughened hands and promises he kept. She had found a home not just in a place but in a person, in a partnership that sustained her through every challenge. She had found a family, children who carried both their names and their values into the future. She had found her purpose, not in teaching other people's children in a schoolhouse, but in raising her own on this ranch, building a legacy that would endure. The lie that brought her west had led her to the truth she needed, even if she had not known to look for it. And every day since, she thanked whatever fate or fortune had intervened to give her this life, this love, this family that was more precious than anything she could have imagined in those desperate days when she first arrived. As they tucked Grace into bed that night, Travis and Delilah stood together watching their youngest daughter drift off to sleep, her small face peaceful in the lamplight. They moved through the house quietly, checking on the other children, making sure windows were open to catch the cool night breeze, performing the familiar rituals of parents who had done this hundreds of times before. Finally, they reached their own room, the space they had shared for 18 years, and prepared for bed with the easy comfort of long familiarity. When they lay down together, Travis pulled Delilah close, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Travis asked, his hand stroking her hair gently. "For keeping your promise, for being real, for giving me the life I did not even know I wanted. Thank you for taking a chance on a dusty cowboy who did not have any pretty words to offer, just hard work and honest intentions," Travis replied. "You made my life worth living, Delilah. You and our children, you are everything." They drifted off to sleep wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by the life they had built together, secure in the knowledge that what they had was real and true, and would endure. Outside, the desert night wrapped around the ranch, the stars wheeling overhead in their eternal dance, bearing witness to the love story that had begun with heartbreak and desperation, but had grown into something beautiful and lasting. The Remington Ranch would continue for generations, passed down from parent to child, each generation adding their own chapter to the story. But it all began with a lie that brought a young woman west and a promise from a cowboy who showed her what truth really meant. It began with two people who found each other when they needed each other most, who built a life together one day at a time, who proved that the best love stories are not the ones that arrive fully formed, but the ones that are constructed with patience and care and unwavering commitment. Delilah Northwood had come west chasing a promise that was a lie. Travis Remington had made her a true promise instead, and in keeping that promise day after day, year after year, he had given her everything that mattered: a home, a family, a partnership built on respect and trust, and a love that would last until their final days and beyond, living on in the children and grandchildren who would carry their story forward into the future.